Welcome to Product AMA, your daily online Ask Me Anything. We started Product AMA to give those passionate or curious about product management a daily break, something to look forward to. The format is 1 hour in length, weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. The first 30 minutes will always be a guest and a featured topic. The last 30 minutes is devoted to you, the audience, to ask your questions. Today we're talking about embracing a design-first product management philosophy. And with us to talk about his experiences with this is Dayton Pereira, who's the founder of ReadySetGo, a user experience and design agency. A little bit about Dayton. Dayton has spent the better part of 20 years building digital products for broadcasters and sports organizations and all sorts of other industries in between. He's a design leader. He's very active in the design and product community, and we're really, really happy to have him on Product AMA today. Dayton, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark Silver. It's good to see you. How you been?
Doing well, thank you. Been busy with these Product AMAs, but we're happy to have you on today.
I'm happy to be on.
Thank you. So let's get into the first question. So when an organization says that they're a design-first product philosophy, what does that really mean? What does that approach actually mean for the organization, and how does that materialize within the structure, within the resources that they have on board?
So I think that definition is largely around how organizations operate when they're making decisions and when they're building some of the features or requirements into their particular products. And those are generally led by customer research over sort of top-down management decisions. So for example, if there's that really goes down to what design first actually means. It goes to the very heart of the customer. So conducting all those interviews, doing that ethnographic research, and then correlating that back to what is the intention that the customer wants to deliver. What's the intent that the customer wants to deliver back to, or the business wants to deliver back to the customer? And they do that from a customer-centric perspective. So when an organization says that they design first, they are really customer first, and they're designing their products and services based around the needs and demands of their customers.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, the terminology might be different organization to organization, or there might be a difference for basically the timing. Like we might be in this movement now where it's customer centered or customer first. For more in the product management design community, we might be saying design first. So I guess walking away from that question, there really isn't one set way to describe it. It is more about a mentality and a philosophy. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. I think it also comes down to, there's a couple of frameworks that you can use from a design or a customer-centric approach. And those frameworks are largely underpinned by what you can see with design thinking, where you have research and really understanding. Then you have sort of these divergent components where you run experiments, or you develop a variety of different ideas. And then you want to test those ideas that are small enough to experiment with against those users. And if you get those experiments right, then you sort of double down, and then you can build them out into sort of bigger versions. So that methodology is definitely a design philosophy around prototyping, testing, iteration. And I think when organizations say they're design first, that's what it means. I guess you could confuse it when you say customer centric, because you might just be receiving some customer information and then building that particular feature right out of the gate without really validating those hypotheses that that customer experience is right or wrong. Because you don't always want to build what people say, you really want to build what people need.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for clarifying that. And I think one of the points that I'll build on with our next question is really about this, how fluid some of these terminologies are within organizations.
Sure.
And if we can both agree that organizations absolutely change over time, whether that's the way they do business or what their business is or their distribution. I mean, there's so much change that goes on. When we look at organizations, and there's generally a pattern that emerges, even in the world's best organizations, where every couple or few years there is a shift, whether that's driven by business need or management change or acquisition. I mean, there are all these sorts of triggers that dictate that change. But generally that change will kind of come from the top and it'll cascade down. And whether that change impacts the customer or not, it depends on the business. But absolutely, when it comes to product, if there's a significant change, or that product team and the way that that business is delivered is likely going to change. So when we think about this concept of a design first approach or a customer first approach, to product management, I would hope that whatever the culture of an organization has become around that philosophy, whatever they call it, that remains regardless of the change that happens to that company. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what you've seen, because you've been doing this for a while, what you've seen in organizations that as they make that big change and maybe on the business side, how that impacts the way that they approach building product all around design.
So I think to answer that question from an executive perspective, the big change happens when organizations open themselves to making mistakes and then course correcting those mistakes over time. Now they're calculated risks, they're calculated mistakes because they're running multiple experiments for each of these ideas in a very, they actually take a framework or a formal process to actually execute that. So it's really important that that the way that these company cultures change is they still adhere to their general business practices and whatnot, but the main thing that happens is that they're more receptive to trying things in small iterations, and if they can see measurable success against the things that they've tried, then they can double down on them. And no matter what happens with the organization, like in times like where we are right now, you're trying different things and you have to change very rapidly with the times. If you keep to that mentality that we can be flexible and agile enough to change based on some market data that we have, with small experiments that we're running continuously, we'll be able to sort of weather any storm.
From what I heard you say there, it sounds like organizations can kind of weather the storm of what I would call business or strategic change at the top level, as long as they have that culture and the people that actually deliver that culture within their product team, so that the quality of the product and the way that they approach the delivery of product is unchanged, even though the company itself may be on a slightly different mission. Okay, so thanks for that. So everyone understands the world that you're in. Tell us a little bit about what ReadySetGo does. Sure.
So ReadySetGo in its current iteration is a company that was formed out of what I found to be necessary to help businesses build the right product over building the product right. And what that means is, for me particularly, I spent an entire career, almost 16 years of running 2 dev shops where we spent a lot of time on engineering practices and making sure that the products that we built were the quality of the code and the design and everything was really great. But we spent less effort with our clients on making sure that those products that we built were actually sustainable. Were they good products to build in the first place? So ReadySetGo is really about using the UX frameworks and processes around research and data and experimentation to make sure that the things that we're being asked to create, we're validating that they should be created in the first place. And if they are, then we create them in the best way that we know how.
And let's break this down a little more in terms of the tools and techniques. So sure. What I'm thinking about here is every organization we just discussed puts their own spin on what they call being design first driven. And from your experience, when we think about the actual process of bringing those products to market through the experimentation that you already talked about, what are those pieces of process that are in place for a culture like that to succeed?
Maybe I can start by giving you an example. of organizational change and running an experiment to see if it's successful. And I'll take an experiment. I'll take something that I'm doing right now, my own example, because I think I can speak to it most in the most educated fashion. So when the entire work from home thing started, we saw some challenges with getting around to our customers and meeting them and whatnot. And we also saw, or we predicted that we're going to see some challenges with getting more business and closing some of these sales opportunities that were in the pipe. So we thought, okay, well, what can we do that could have an impact to our business, in some kind of fashion. So we thought, I thought, why don't we do a course on some of the technologies and tools that we use? But to do that, let's run a simple experiment. Or an experiment would be, let's create some kind of a format for a course, and we'll see if we can really quickly put together, almost in real time, some course curriculum for some of these products that we use, and educate some people and see how that works. So in the first week, we said, let's put a simple course together. It's going to be an hour a day every day for a week, and we'll see how that turns out. And we used some pretty rudimentary tools. Like we were just using email, and we're using Gmail as a calendar to just send out invites and whatnot. And we recorded every class. We reviewed the recordings, and we didn't even have a full-blown, really well fleshed out curriculum. At the end of the week, we reviewed it, and we're like, okay, well, this was not bad. Let's see what will happen if we do it again. Now, we've been offering these courses for free. And what we do is we simply put out an invite, and whoever comes, we record the sessions and so on. But the big experiment was, is this something that we can now offer as a new channel for our business that we can earn revenue with? And it turns out that, initially we thought, okay, well, could we do education and training? And the answer was yes, but we didn't have any sense of how difficult or easy this might be. Turns out after, running these courses 1, 2, 3 weeks in a row, it's difficult. It is not a piece of cake to deliver education and programming. But, we made the absolute best of it. And at the end of it, we've created all of this content that we're now delivering paid courses of the similar or even more advanced curriculum on a variety of different topics, having a really clear idea how to market the actual events, how to capture leads, how to automate a lot of the marketing and curriculum and all of those initiatives that go along with it, how to create a community beyond that. We have these active Slack channels and stuff that are really, really interesting. And all of that was from a really simple experiment to say, how can we train a few people? Maybe there'll be 8. And at the end of 3 weeks, there's been 100. So that's a really great example, in my opinion, of something that we've done ourselves to run an experiment on how might we, that was around, is there another way that we can create a new channel for the revenue for our business?
When we think about the foreseeable future and the work that you've been doing with stakeholders and getting them into a room, how do you see the future of this? You just talked about this course that you were testing. Are there any other courses or material that if things were different, if this was normal times and you could be in the room with people, that you would be offering a workshop or a design sprint? What can we expect from you to be able to continue with the path that your business has been on when all of a sudden everything has to be taught remotely or operated remotely? What are you doing to maintain that continuity?
So one of the things that we're looking at right now is there's 2 things. So there's offering courses to educate people on how to do certain things. And then there's, working with clients to facilitate the development of new products or existing products with new features and so on. And before this entire work from home situation, what we spent a lot of time doing was workshops. So we'd get in a room, we'd spend a couple of days, maybe an entire week sometimes, and we would, it would be a very sort of co-creation experience where we're doing all of this stuff while co-located in a boardroom and whatnot. The only thing that's different now is we're not co-located in a boardroom, but all of the assets that we end up creating are not sticky notes that are stuck on a board, but they become digital assets using digital tools like Figma, Miro, Mural. We use all of these tools. We get all these folks, over a screen share like this, and we still have the same amount of discipline as much as possible with your kids running around, because that sometimes happens. We may have to start and stop a particular workshop so that somebody else can continue at a later time. But because all of those assets are digitally available and perpetually there, there is a way to put it together. It takes a little bit of preparation, a little bit more preparation, a little bit of extra communication. We use tools like Slack to make that happen. But for the most part, a lot of the activities that we still do simply take a little bit more preparation and some knowledge with tools. And so we spend a little bit more time educating the people that are participating in our workshops on how to use the tools that we're going to be using, because they may be unfamiliar. They're not sticky notes. They're not markers. They're not pencils. They are, actual digital tools.
All right, well, that's a very quick pivot, and I'm looking forward to seeing that come together. Can you talk a little bit about those tools that you're referencing? What are the names of them that you're going to be trying first, let's say, see if they work?
So a tool that I use daily is Figma, but that's a design tool very specific to full-blown UX design and product design. But its features, like one of its big killer features since day one, has always been this multi-user facility. So you can, multiple people can jump into a single document, just like Google Docs, and draw and ideate and come up with concepts. There are new tools that allow you to do that as well, virtual whiteboards. The ones that we're going to be testing very soon, or we're not testing but using, is Miro. So that has a similar kind of function, but it's more geared towards flow diagrams, workflows, journey maps, that kind of thing, which just come as templates that are easy to use. Then another virtual whiteboard is Mural. I haven't used that yet, but I know that from talking with other people that it's quite popular. Envision has one as well. It's called Freehand, but Miro and Figma are my 1 and 2 products that we use for virtual collaboration in real time.
So as we think about this need to be present when you're home, and you already mentioned the odd children perhaps are walking in to a screen or something like that for people. When you're looking at this live in the moment kind of training, sometimes someone might just have to walk away. Are there any other tools or techniques that you're considering so that there's a component of the training that people could do at their leisure, at their own time, because of just how fluid it is in the way we're working today, where all of a sudden we can't be available at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and we couldn't have predicted that 2 days before.
Yeah, it's hard to block up that kind of time when not only are you working from home, but you're trying hard to still, you're not alone while you're working from home. The rest of your family is also working from home or playing at home, or you got the whole gang there, and there's nothing you can do about it. So we definitely have these extras. I think there's lots of ways that you need to work with your virtual group to keep them engaged, keep them entertained even. So Kahoots is something that we do as well, where we ask these little trivia questions so that people can. It's a trivia game that my kids play at school, actually, and what it is quite simple, where you put together a game so you can test how much people retained of the subject matter that you just delivered. But it's entertaining, it becomes competitive, and people want to win and stuff like that, and it becomes fun to do. And if you can incorporate those kinds of things that that are not just all about lecturing, then that becomes useful. In workshop settings, we also have things where people need to break out into groups. And so I think Zoom has a facility where you can do breakout sessions where 2 or 3 people need to work together simultaneously, so they can do that. And then, of course, there's preparation of the homework after that. Not necessarily homework, but work that needs to be done either after the live session that is then sent to groups of people. And when we're doing training, like the training I'm doing right now, I do a session for an hour in the morning, and then I automate the homework through marketing automation, so that the folks that just listen to the content, they not only see the recording of the actual content in case they miss something, but they also get activity and work to do, and then they're supported through a Slack channel where they can ask questions to make it happen. So all of those things combined deliver a really high value experience. And if you're doing education, or if you're doing a workshop to actually solve a real problem, I think the same kind of stuff applies.
Well, it sounds like you put a lot of thought and practice and testing into this new version of training that you've been rolling out and continue to roll out. When you think about pricing, and I'm fairly familiar with the pricing of these various types of user experience and design and product management seminars, most of these, whether they're multi-day or multi-week modules, even a few hours I've seen, the prices could be anywhere from $400 or $500 for a few hours to multiple thousands of dollars for several days or several weeks. So with that in mind, how do you think, as a new entrant in this space, that you're going to be able to attract the audience that might otherwise be spending a lot more money to learn something from an educator who has been refining their course over weeks, months, even years?
I can tell you what we're doing right now with some of the courses that we're offering daily is we have an introductory course just so that we can build up some kind of traction, some kind of media awareness, social media awareness about some of our programs. And that we actually offer for free. And that free, it's very much like a SaaS type product that has a freemium component to it. And the freemium component here is we have a strict or a specific set curriculum for what we're offering for free. It has a start and an end time. There's really no limit on the number of attendees that can be present. And what we end up doing is once the free component is completed, we make sure that the students that are still there, we've whet their appetite enough to say, is this something that you would like to learn more about? And then we offer, or we present a more advanced course on various components around product design, product development. What we're doing right now is we're developing a paid version for our advanced Webflow class. We're doing a design systems primer that will likely be free, and then a design systems advanced component or advanced class. We're doing a design sprint class as well. And the format of the design sprint will likely be over two days or 3 days, because you just need a lot more team collaboration. So we're not too concerned about what pricing is with other people or how other people are pricing their products. I'm more concerned about delivering the highest possible value that I can to those folks that are giving up their time to actually come to our classes, that are generally done live, and maybe they'll even sign up for pre-recorded ones later on. So as long as it's good for our business and it's delivering value to our customers, that's pretty much the only part that I'm terribly concerned about right now.
Well, thanks for that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all goes. There's a lot of material that you're looking to put on the market, and it seems like there's a lot of people with time to learn and want to skill up. It's a very interesting time to be in the education space.
Well, I think also it's not just that there are people that are not doing anything. There are people that are doing tons of stuff, and people that are struggling to just get by. But I think just overall, this time has given us the opportunity to say that we can deliver high value. And you don't have to have these big elaborate events that are at a specific location and that are catered and all of these different things. We can do them differently. We can be more agile about delivering really high value content that's just delivered differently and lasts longer, in my opinion, than, a couple of days event at or a couple of days course that you might take somewhere and then never see or hear from those people again. What we're doing now is we're delivering the virtual courses, and we still have continuous support for that group of people that attended via, via something like Slack.
It's a very different approach, incredibly topical for what we're going through today. We don't yet know what a normal will look like, but it certainly sounds like what you're building, regardless of the physical distance we all have, is a way to create a community and keep people in contact and closer together. So it really does sound amazing. So you've talked a bit about research and data and testing, and we know that they're super critical for design practices in general, let alone a design first or customer first organization. So in your UX practice, is there one technique that you would pick above all the others that is, in your opinion, the best way to build the right product?
I wouldn't say that's one technique. I think it's a number of different techniques. And I think the most important technique is to be open to being wrong. I think when in my previous years as a product designer, I spent a lot of time really trying to defend my ideas, regardless of how they panned out. And now, as I've matured as a product designer after 20 years, it should have taken me less, but it's taken me this long. What can I say? I feel that I'm much less attached to any of my ideas unless I can have them validated by some empirical method that gives me enough evidence that says it's true. So I think of all the methods, it's being open to being completely wrong and proved wrong by data, because data doesn't really lie. It's very factual. It tells you this and this. But there's also some challenges with data because you might be measuring the wrong thing, and you might be interpreting that data in a different way. So you also have to be open to say, okay, well, is this data telling me the right story? And being mature enough to look for the various narratives that data might be that data might be telling me.
It's an interesting answer that you just gave, because when you think about designers, and I've had the privilege of working with many designers over my career, there's certainly a lot of power that they've wielded, and it's tied to some degree to ego and arrogance because they can do things that others can't. And when you think about this concept of data and this ability to be wrong, it is more characteristic of someone who's a little more humble. So in your trials and tribulations over the 20 years that you were just mentioning, maybe you can talk a little bit about when it struck a chord with you to say, yeah, maybe I can't just grandstand and say I'm right all the time. Is there any in particular moment where that kind of surfaced for you?
I think many. I think for a long time, I was that guy. I had, pretty big ego around the things that I was doing. I always had to be right, that kind of thing. And, as I started to see the products that I was responsible for, the ones that I built, get into market, and they were doing things. I think the biggest one was a product that we created for one of the TV channels around second screen. And it was around the time of the Olympics, and we created this product based on some third-party data that we saw from Google that said people use their devices while watching TV. And that was it. It was like a one-liner of data. And this is a classic example of how we did the worst possible job of interpreting that data to mean something else. We basically bent it to mean what we wanted it to mean. And what we wanted it to mean was, if someone is watching a show, they are highly likely to be doing something related to that show on their phones. And with that hypothesis, we ended up spending, tons of our clients' money building these products, because they too were also biased by it, because they just wanted to ingest that information, that incorrect misinformation. And so we built all of these products. The product that we created was called Synchro. And basically it was like a trivia game that editors could create content in real time alongside some kind of reality TV show or something like that. And it was a complete failure. It was a complete disaster. We spent like 5 months building this thing, and it was a complete waste of time. And the big thing that we should have really looked at is, well, we should have done some real ethnographic research, not some third-party research that we pulled off the internet about Google telling us that people use their phones while watching TV. That's still true. It happens every day in my living room. All my kids watch TV and use their phones at the same time. But the thing that they're doing on the phone is the exact opposite of what they're watching on TV. And if we had just spent 2 hours just observing people in their homes and how they actually use their devices while consuming televised content, we would know very quickly that there is no way in hell we need to spend 6 months building a product like this. So after that, it was, okay, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. And it's better to be proven wrong than to hold my ground, try to be right, and then just deliver a really poor quality product. That was the last time I did that.
Well, thanks for providing the example. If I'm thinking back to around the time when that occurred, it wasn't the wrong strategy. Twitter, above all others, was providing data that showed this co-viewing between what people are watching, what people are doing on Twitter. It was a different time, though. It wasn't a world where we had OTT and everything was viewable when you wanted it on the platform of your choice. We still had this separation between what I would call engagement-driven experiences, which were generally on your phone, and television experiences, which were generally a 6 or 10 foot experience. So very defendable at the time, and even on Product AMA, we've spoken to a company called Fanex, which does that live companion experience directly in a venue, but it's very different because
and I think it could be successful if we really looked at the nuance of what kind of programming it was. How do you actually market the actual the second screen interaction? But just doing it haphazardly, I think the expectation was too high for it to be extremely successful. And there's all kinds of other things and other challenges with it as well. Like we tried to do one where we listened to the audio tones and sync with that. And that was a whole other mess of complexity that barely resulted in success. Oh. Yeah, it was very difficult.
Well, listen, what I do know, because I've been there myself, is any successful person likely has a string of failure behind them that they don't necessarily look as failure. They look at it as a learning opportunity. So I'm sure at the time it was much worse than it actually was. And today we can look back on it only with memories of, I'm not going to do that again.
Oh, absolutely. And, no one got hurt. We tried something, it didn't work out. But the lesson learned there was, do your own research. Don't rely on third-party data. And make sure that the research that you do is fair and is conducted properly so that the data that results from it is something that informs the right decisions. And I think that's sort of the takeaway for me. It's don't just believe anything that other people say. Just make sure that you're doing it for yourself.
That's great advice, and thanks for sharing that with us. I wanted to thank everyone for joining us. Dayton, thanks so much for being with us today.
As always, thank you very much for having me.
Follow Product AMA on Twitter and send us your topic suggestions. We look forward to seeing you soon.